We're good? All right. Call to order 8:04, regular meeting of the Mayville Common Council. Please take the roll.
Alderperson Roger Smith,
Here.
Alderperson Jack Abbott,
Here.
Alderperson Kim Olson,
Here.
Alderperson Joseph Reese,
Here.
Alderperson Bob Smith.
Here.
Quorum.
All right, thank you. Are there any citizen comments? No citizen comments. Item 3, consent agenda. Approve the minutes of the December 12th, 2022 Personnel Committee meeting of the whole. Make her make a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of December 12th.
Motion by Jack Abbott,
A second.
second by Joseph Reese. Any discussion?
It would be 2023, not 2012.
December.
December.
It's 2022.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No worries. No worries. All right, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, December 12th, 2022 Personnel Committee meeting of the whole minutes approved. Next item, approve the minutes of January 5th, 2023 Special Personnel Committee meeting of the whole. Anybody care to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the January 5th, 2023 Special Personnel Committee of the whole.
Thank you, Alderman Reese.
I second it.
Thank you, Alderman Smith. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
Aye.
No,
All right, carries. Motion carries. Item 3, approve the minutes of January 9th, 2023 Common Council meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Alderman Smith,
I'll second.
second by Alderman Reese. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Motion carries. Item 4, approve the minutes of January 12th, 2023 Special Common Council meeting. Here to make a motion.
I'll make a motion for that too.
The motion by Alderman Bob
I'll
Smith,
second the motion.
second by Jack Abbott. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All right.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, next item, report of the officers. Mayor's monthly report. Had a department head meeting last week. Let me just start with DPW. Point that I want to make. So I went on a ride along recently with Jack Hurst, DPW, running the snowplow. Great learning experience. What I learned was there's an art and a science, not only to operating the snowplow, but also in the way that they apply salt. So I want to commend the group from DPW for the work that they do, the time and effort that they do in helping us keep the streets safe. Annie Gonstead, city clerk, you're doing a fantastic job. We've been watching, your development and progress and working on the elections. Thank you for all you do. Comptroller Treasurer Angie Rundy, Angie, doing a fantastic job, right? First in the morning, last to leave, spending a lot of time working on weekends and evenings, cleaning up the books, right? So we do know that Angie is involved in correcting errors which have been compounding over a period of several years. I think at the conclusion or the completion of the audit, we'll have more details to share with the council and the public in terms of the books. And so looking forward to getting to that point. I mentioned earlier, Baker Tilly auditors will be on site this week. And that we do anticipate receiving the results in May or June. And I will make sure that we set up a special meeting with John Rader, our auditor, to go through in great detail that the audit results themselves will be really important. I firmly believe that without knowing where you're at financially, it's impossible to project and plan and do things constructively and productively. So I think we're going to be in a better position than we've been in quite some time in terms of books. I do want to thank Nicole DeBaker for all the efforts that you make in assisting as well, assisting from water and wastewater from a financial standpoint. So thank you, Nicole, for all you do. In terms of the library itself, construction is underway. I don't know if you all have had the chance to drive by the new library building, but we're making significant process there. I met last week with Corey Creaser and Tom Beatty, talking about the progress of that project itself. We anticipate that the new library will be complete in the October timeframe. Unless Jennifer has something else to add, but that is the timeline right now. Police department's fully staffed, doing a fantastic job. Thank you for all you do. Right now, one thing that is coming up, and I would encourage people to consider, is we've got a Citizens Academy that the police department's gonna be running at the end of March, I believe it is. One of the things that was kind of eye-opening to me in becoming mayor and having the opportunity to see kind of what's happening behind the scenes. You know, our emergency services, our police department deals with real life, heavy hitting, hardcore crime issues from time to time that you may not expect in a community like Mayville, Wisconsin. So we can't commend them enough for what they do. So I would encourage anybody who's interested in learning more to participate in the Citizens Academy. Fire department indicated, Brad Marks indicated, you know, we're still dealing with the aging equipment issue. And we also have an aging crew, right? We have challenges in recruitment. So if anybody in the public is interested in participating and becoming a part of the volunteer fire department, certainly please step up. I do want to, you know, mention the passing of firefighter Roger Billington, who passed away on January 15th. Want to thank him and his family for all the years of service to the city of Mayville. EMS doing a fantastic job. Julie Staffen's doing a fantastic job with all the training that she's doing for EMS staff. They continue to add staff, but if you're interested in being working with EMS, they're certainly open to taking applications and volunteers. The last time, two things that I want to point out. So when we talk about water, the water and wastewater department, we are dealing with an aging infrastructure. We just got the approval to rebuild well 4 altogether. It's on Kikoski Street, and we are in the process of designing a new plant. And my intention is to promote public knowledge in terms of what our existing conditions are like in the plant. Roger, I know you did the tour just recently, and it's eye-opening. So we are kind of embarking on efforts and working with engineers and designing the new plant. And I want to make sure that the community remains involved in that entire process and knowledgeable about what all that entails. Let's see. Lastly, I just want to say that, you know, Mayville and our water and wastewater departments really kind of hit the national stage in what they're doing. And that is in the lead removal, the lead remediation. I mean, we really kind of set the mark. I mean, we're not only right place at the right time, but we proactively worked with the government agencies to make sure that we had the funding available to us, and we were able to capitalize on opportunities that other municipalities since have not. And I think that there's a national publication that will be coming out soon. Water and wastewater department, their lead remediation is going to be on the national stage for what we've done. So great example of the good that government and our services can do. Soon, I've been meeting with various developers. Soon, the Common Council will be seeing some proposals from some developers on 2 residential projects that are being considered right now. So Mayville remains a great place to live and a desirable place to live. And what we want to do is to continue to find ways to increase tax revenue without raising individual taxes. The way that you do that is to spur new development and investment in it. So that's all I got from the mayor's desk. Next item. Resolution 5844-2023, appreciation of service to Rhonda Fleming.
Whereas the city council members, city of Mayville employees, and the citizens of the city of Mayville would like to express their appreciation to Rhonda Fleming for her public service contributions and dedications while working for the city of Mayville from August 13th, 1999 through March 3rd of 2023. Now therefore be it resolved that the Common Council of the city of Mayville does hereby acknowledge the dedication and commitment to excellence that Rhonda has shown during her service to the city and wishes her well.
I'll make a motion to recommend.
Motion by Bob Smith,
I'll second.
second by Joe Reese. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Ron, is that your name? Okay, we got a certificate for it. We'll make sure we get that to Rhonda. Thank you. Next item, resolution 5845 twenty twenty-three, dedication of May 13th, 2023 as International Migratory Bird Day.
Whereas the Common Council of the City of Mayville hereby approves and dedicates May 13th, 2023 as International Migratory Bird Day. The known celebration in the City of Mayville is in conjunction with the Horicon Marsh Bird Festival, which will be May 12th through the 14th of 2023. Many birding events take place throughout the week and various stops along the marsh, including the Horicon Marsh. Now therefore be it resolved that May 13th, 2023 is hereby proclaimed as International Migratory Bird Day. And we urge all citizens to celebrate this observance and to support efforts to protect and conserve migratory birds and their habitats in our community and the world at large.
Thank you. Would you like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Joe Reese,
I'll second the motion.
second by Jack Abbott. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 4, resolution 5846 2023. This is a council member appointment to Parks, Rec, and the Tag Center. Have not had the opportunity to clear with any of you. We're running thin. We're down one common council member. So, and I will say that I will ask the group, is anybody interested in serving to chair the Parks Department or Parks Commission Council?
Parks and Rec Tag.
Parks and Rec Tag, or otherwise we can table it.
Can we afford to table it, seeing that it's winter?
Yeah, but I think we'll be
Okay,
okay. Yeah.
I'm gonna make a motion to table that one then.
Kim Olson, motion to table.
I'll second.
Second, Joseph Reese, all in favor?
Aye.
The motion is tabled. Thank you. Resolution 5847 2023, appointment to Communications Committee, council member. You have the resolution?
Whereas the term of older person Molly Hinkle was appointment to the Communications Committee as indicated with resolution 5819-2022. And whereas a vacancy has occurred in Ward 3 with the resignation of Molly Hinkle on January 6th, 2023. And whereas in accordance with resolution 1948-1990, the mayor shall appoint subject to confirmation of the Common Council. And therefore, the mayor hereby appoints Alderperson Kim Olson to serve on the Communications Committee for the remainder of the aforementioned term. And now therefore be it resolved that the Common Council of the City of Mayville does hereby approve the above mentioned mayoral appointment to the Communications Committee.
All right. Motion.
I'll make a motion.
Bob Smith makes the motion.
I'll second.
Alderman Smith also put the motion. Or second, Smith and Smith. Any discussion?
You good with this?
I am,
Okay.
Yeah.
All in favor?
yeah, I'm good with it.
All right,
Thank you for taking on the additional
Yeah.
responsibility.
thank you, Kim.
You,
All right, next item, clerk report.
All right, for February, obviously my focus is very much on the upcoming spring primary. Tomorrow will be the public test here at 10 a.m. I'm hoping to get to meet most of the people who help out with the elections that will come in. The spring primary itself is happening on Tuesday, February 21st. Getting the proper training and certification under my belt was a first priority when I took this position, and I was able to complete it within the first week on the job. This was one of the terms of my employment when offered the position, so I was pleased that I was able to get that accomplished so quickly.
Thank you.
With things. With regards to the elections, everyone I've contacted from local election workers through county and state contacts have been immensely helpful in navigating the process with my first election. Otherwise, every day brings a new facet of city government to learn. I'm enjoying the challenge and seeking training opportunity and resources wherever I can find them in order to gain that broad-based knowledge, so I'm able to be effective in this position. The research and training also aids in the process of ensuring that we're working toward being proactive and current in our services to the city. The comptroller, Angie Rundy, and I have been working in tandem to ensure not only that we're in compliance with, various federal, state, local laws and rules, but also try to evaluate city hall operations so that we're best serving the citizens that we can with our time and our resources. One note of particular interest that came up, I was contacted by Senator Mark Warren's office. They have requested to use City Hall for a budget listening session. So that will be occurring here on March 13th at 2:30 p.m. They wanted to use our room.
Who is that?
Senator Mark Warren.
Oh, okay.
Oh, thank you. Good work, Anna. Items 2 through 8, I would take a motion to approve, discuss and approve operators licenses in mass for Julie Sawicki of Theresa, Stacy Schrader of Lamira, Michael Mitchell of Hartford, Alicia Woodruff of Theresa, Leah Hines of Oregon, Rebecca Kierzik of Mayville, and James Gaultier of Lamira.
I'll make a motion to approve those in mass if the police chief has.
Motion by Smith,
I'll second.
second by Reese. Any discussion? Chief?
Is James on here?
Item number 8.
Oh, I'm on this one, okay.
Yeah. All right. Police chief's cleared
Yes.
it. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motions carry en masse. All right, committees, commissions, and boards. Water and wastewater commission, the date of the next meeting will be March 7th at 4 p.m. Library board, Jennifer, your monthly report.
So our programming increased dramatically over the last year. The number of our staff-led programs increased from 69 in 2021 to 129 in 2022, an increase of almost 87%. The attendance to these programs increased 288% from 606 to 2,354 in 2022. Our self-directed programs increased 45%, and the number of participants in these programs increased 57%. Our circulation has also increased. For example, our circulation this January was up 8% over January 2022. In regards to Monarch IT, the Monarch system, Monarch IT reported that our current firewall is at its end of life. Starting in February, a contractor will be on site at the system to help with the configuration. This will be a complicated process and will principally affect all Monarch connections. LizNet will be on standby for the conversion. In regards to personnel activities, you've already heard about Rhonda, and her last day of work is March 3rd. She's been a wonderfully positive force for the library for more than 23 consecutive years and more than 25 years in total, because she did work at the library in the 80s. So she's been the face of the library for a long time, and she will be missed. I volunteered to take her place on the spot of the Systems Circulation Committee. And I also serve on the cybersecurity work group, which met in January. Children's librarian Sheila and board treasurer Sue Smith went through a lot of safe materials as we were preparing to move the new library. And they are organizing items year by year and carefully considering what needs to be kept and prepared for moving to the new facility and what can be safely discarded. Some of the items are being cataloged. Some are being sent to the Historical Society or the White Limestone Museum if the items seem better suited for those venues. This is a very large project and will be ongoing for some time. The library maintains many records, reports, and documents related to the Heckmovich Glacier Ridge landfill. Sue and Sheila investigated the possibility of copies of this information being available elsewhere, such as at other libraries or stored with city documents, and they discovered that the library is the only location that has received and kept these files. Therefore, we will be taking them with us to the new facility, and we'll explore ways to raise public awareness about possession of these important documents. In regards to programming, in order to encourage early literacy, we will now be offering preschool story time each week rather than bi-weekly. We will offer one session at 10:30 in the morning every Tuesday and one session at 6 p.m. every Wednesday. We are now offering 2 homeschool hangouts a month, one in the morning and one in the afternoon. And we started a monthly coloring club. And we just found out that NAMI, the National Organization for Mental, I think, I don't remember what the acronym is, but they just followed this and shared the post about our coloring club. So that was interesting. In regards to our collection, we now have a number of STEAM kits available for circulation, and the project moving DVDs to be more accessible for patrons is almost complete. Rhonda has been heading this project and has taken over a year and a half to complete. Her persistence and oversight of volunteers and other staff have helped her keep this project moving. I wanted to publicly thank her for her diligence and hard work. This will save the library money on processing, save the staff time, and permit patrons to use a self-check for DVDs and Blu-rays more easily. The new self-check machine, which we got through a grant, has arrived. Patrons are always welcome to check their items out at our circulation desk. But now they have the option to use the self-check if they so desire. And finally, tax forms have arrived. We have a limited supply of forms in Spanish as well.
That question,
Yes,
hey, did you say STEAM kit?
STEAM kits, yes, we have some STEAM kits. We're trying to get more and more kits out, different kinds of things.
For the kids?
For kids, but we also have a birding kit that has binoculars and birding books. So, the library thinks that is something we'd like to grow in the library.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer. All right, date and time, the next library board meeting will be March 9th at 6 p.m. Public Works Committee, first item, we have a presentation by Joe DeYoung of MSA regarding stormwater flood abatement proposal.
I'll leave yours, you said?
Do you want to, are you going to project?
Yeah, it would be nice.
Yeah, we should be able to do that.
Where does it reach?
Probably not far enough.
Where are you posting? As Eric gets sets up, I'll start this off a little bit. I'm Joe DeYoung with MSA. This is Eric Thompson. Obviously, I work in Beaver Dam office, with a lot of communities. Eric works out of our Madison office and helps a lot with these specialty type projects when it comes to stormwater runoff. History behind this a little bit. Past mayor obviously reached out to us to do an evaluation of flooding that occurs in your community to find out what are options, things that we should be looking at from a grand scheme, kind of like a 1,000-foot overview. We've had a lot of experience in evaluating floodplains. We have a lot of experience of mapping it out for counties, for Sugar River, things like that. So things that you've been dealing with along your corridor and around your community and then through your community. So we got so far along and obviously took a look at it. I want Eric to come here to basically present and talk about what we found out so far and what are some questions that you might ask before we proceed from there. So with that, I'm going to kind of turn it over to the expert as I sit here and kind of flip the screens and stuff, and then we'll go into questions after that. Sound good? Sure, I can probably flip the screen. All right, then I'm going to stand there.
Yeah, so like Joe said, my name is Eric Thompson. I lead our company's Water Resources Engineering Planning Group. I've been working with Joe on this study now for several months.
Yeah.
As you know, the city has studied this creek a couple of times. In fact, about 20 years ago, you first hired our firm to take a look at it. And then more recently, you had another engineering firm take a look at it, Kunkel. This slide shows an image of the watershed, and I just it's interesting to sort of see how technology's evolved. This is what was done back in 2001, and it was off of an old USGS quad because that's kind of the topographic mapping quality that was available back then. This was done a little bit more recently. This is using something called StreamStats, which is an online tool that the USGS put together for estimating flows and things. And this is some of the stuff that we've done more recently, just using some LiDAR data, some aerial contour mapping, a little bit, I think, more cutting edge than either of the other two. But the bottom line is, we're looking at 100-year flood protection. That's the FEMA standard for making sure that folks, when they invest in their properties, have adequate protection. And it's kind of a juxtaposition of, insurance rates, right? You could protect your properties for the 1,000-year storm, but that's gonna require so much more investment. And so the government said, hey, the 100-year storm is a nice balance between the risk of any given amount of flooding and the cost necessary to protect yourself and mitigate yourself from that kind of flooding. So these numbers here talk about the 100-year flow rates in Spring Brook Creek. So back in 2001, it was estimated to be about 336 CFS by Mellon Firm. More recently, in 2014, the DNR and FEMA came through and studied the creek and established the current regulatory flood elevations. They used the rate of about 400 CFS. And CONCO came through in 2020, kind of reassessed it and came up with a value of 301. The official number is 400 because that's what FEMA set it at. I know that CFS probably doesn't mean much to you. Just to kind of give you a perspective, I grew up on a farm in southeast Minnesota, and our farm was bisected by a river. And in the middle of summer, I did a study when I was in high school, when I was in college, to figure out what the flow rate was. In the middle of the summer, the flow in that stream is about 100 CFS, and the stream is about 20 feet wide, and I can easily walk it medium. So 400 CFS is 4 times that flow, but really it's still not a lot of flow. And it's going to be kind of important to kind of bear in mind that it's not that much flow, because the next couple slides I'm going to talk about what it actually takes to reduce the flooding. And even though it's not that much flow, it takes a lot. So the magic number is about 400. That's what we're looking at for today's conditions. This is the map that FEMA put together. This is actually, I've spliced together 2 images. You can kind of see the different qualities. This is the map of the floodplain that FEMA put together. And it goes from Kikoski, right there by the river, to Dayton Street. And it says here very carefully, limit of study. So when they make these maps, they being the DNR or FEMA, they sort of take a look at, all right, where is there a density of urban development, and where do we expect there to be a increase in the density of urban development? And that's where they allocate the resource. They don't have infinite money, so they've got to kind of target where they think things are going on, and they identify between the river and Dayton Street as sort of an area of concern. And this blue blob that you see is effectively the area that would be inundated during the 100-year storm. And I'm sure you're all well aware, there's quite a lot of existing buildings in that area. Jumping forward just a little bit, this is an enhanced image of that exact same map, although it's focusing on a much closer area. When Joe and I started the project, the clerk sent us a map saying, hey, these are the folks that often report flooding, these parcels that are identified in yellow between Kikoski and Breckenridge. This map on the right is a map that we created. It's actually an electronic image of the FEMA floodplain map, along with a survey of all of the different properties along the creek. And there's a lot of stuff going on here, and I apologize for that. I was just trying to kind of get as much information out there as I possibly could. But these blue images are existing homes. The yellow are existing garages. This big blue blob, that's the 100-year floodplain. And then these ones that are outlined with the black and white, interestingly enough, are subject to flooding risk from 2 different sources. So I've been talking about Spring Brook Creek, but just off the page, north of Kikoski is where the river lies. So if the river comes up, it's going to back up its water into the creek. And these homes are low enough that even if there's nothing going on in Kikoski, the backwater from the river is going to come up and impact those homes to the point of flooding them. So we've been talking about what's this watershed study? What can we do on the creek to make flooding better? These folks will still be at risk for flooding, even if the creek were gone. All right. So there's many homes subject to risk. This map that I just covered up only shows between Breckenridge and Kikoski. There's all sorts that are further upstream from that. We were kind of focusing on this initial area. Some of them are at risk from the creek, and as I pointed out, some of them are at risk just from the backwater of the river. There's a lot of things that we can do if we want to start looking at floodproofing. Obviously, we can buy out those homes. If the homes are subject to recurring flooding, there's grant programs to purchase the properties, relocate the homes, the folks that live there, and just sort of eliminate the problem kind of at the source. But of course, we can do upstream detention, put in a big reservoir, construct a dam, hold water back behind it, lower the flows that come through the stream, or we can increase the downstream conveyance, basically make bigger bridges, make bigger pipes, those sorts of things. Somewhere in between all of those is where the solution lies. So back in 2001, and I'm going to apologize again, Some of these slides I'm showing you a lot, some of them I'm showing very little. This one I'm showing very little, as will the next one. But in 2001, MSA, my predecessors, looked at adding some storage. So city proper is up here. This is that same watershed map. City proper is up here. Down here, where it's kind of shaded, they thought, hey, here's some low-lying land that we could build one of these, dams or embankment across and hold back some of the flow. The original estimate for the flow is about 336 CFS out there at the mouth where it meets the river. But if they add 56 acre-feet of storage, so again, another engineering term here, but an acre, about the size of a football field, you got 56 of them a foot deep, or one of them is 56 feet deep. The big quantity of volume can cut the flow by not quite half, but get it down from that 336 number to about 180. Significant, but unfortunately not quite enough. This is another approach. This is what Kunkel did. They looked at a number of different things. And again, I'm simplifying this greatly, both the 2001 study and this Kunkel study. But one of the things they looked at was, well, let's make the pipes larger. So we got Kikoski here, we got Breckenridge, we got Willow. They want to upsize all of those. So you can imagine, you got a pipe that's a restriction, you make that bigger, get more water through, water elevations go down. Their estimate was about 301 CFS. And by upsizing this pipe, by replacing it with a bigger box, adding a very large metal arch pipe, and adding another box there, they were able to reduce the flood elevation by 0.3 of a foot. Which again, is not very much when you're considering that some of these houses are flooded on the order of feet. All right, so now I'm boomeranging, I'm going right back to showing you too much. But this is that same map I had introduced before. And this is, some of the number crunching that we do kind of behind the scenes before we can make these maps. And I don't really expect you to look at these numbers and make any sense of them. But what I'm showing here are a number of different columns. So these two columns are the existing conditions assessment according to feet. So I've thrown out some flow rate numbers there. This is the higher number, the 400 cubic feet per second flow rate. But basically what it's telling us is that there's 9 structures that are in the floodplain of the creek. And there are 5 of them that are, I did my advance poorly when I wrote this, there's 5 of them that are in the backwater of the river. So we've got, just in this short little area, quite a few problems. If we look at the results from my own firm study back when they were going to build the 56 acre foot pond and hold back all of that flow and cut it down to about 250 CFS. I had said 180. That was in the old way of doing it. We updated to today's standards. It comes out to about 250. We can get 4 structures out of the floodplain. We build a big pond, we get 4 structures out. Similarly, if Kunkel's plan is put in place where we identify these 3 larger culverts, we get 4 structures out of the floodplain. So it's a little bit different because you can see the yellow shading here. Here they're looking at a home here improved. Here they're looking at home there improved. But these have some pretty big improvements, 56 acre feet of storage, 3 major roadway crossings upgraded, and we're still not seeing very much reduction in terms of flood risk, at least in these folks here. There could be different benefits to the folks further south in the city, further upstream, but we're just not seeing it right here. Which kind of takes me to my semi-anticlimactic conclusion, which is the solutions really need to look at the entire system. So back in 2001, MSA was really focusing on watershed storage and things like that. A little bit of that was done in 2020, but mostly 2020 looked at making the pipes larger. Somewhere in between those, some storage, some larger pipes, and perhaps some property buyouts is where the solution exists. And unfortunately, where we're looking right now, engineering solutions probably won't solve all the problems. Those homes in particular that are in the backwater of the river, they're just simply too low. And the river is too large that there's really not going to be a super effective way from an engineering perspective. What can I use for my skills to solve those problems? It may be that the best alternative is to do a property buyout. But the point is it's going to be kind of a long-term solution. It's going to require looking at grant programs. It's going to be looking at property cooperation and just lots and lots of planning, frankly, over probably what will be several years, maybe a decade. It's just how long it takes sometimes to realize all this stuff.
Just want to make sure you understand where we are today. So Eric kind of gave you a synopsis of where we're at. One of the things that were asked for us, you can imagine, is to start looking at your waterway going through the community And when you see problems, stop and come report. We found problems. We're here to report. And again, we don't necessarily have all the solutions that Eric alluded to, but at this point, it's like we wanted to get going and see where it is, but right at the throat of where it connects to the river, we obviously know there's something that really can't be solved. Now, MSA has been involved with many different programs in order to be able to do the bio, which is not things that obviously anybody wants to hear, including the residents. But at the end of the day, there really doesn't appear to be a solution to be able to take down that water and deal with it without being able to address long term. So like Eric alluded to, this is not going to be solved overnight. This is not something that might even be solved by this board. But it's just something that you got to be aware of as development occurs and things happen that impact that watershed, that big area that shows you that 1,300 acres. Everything that happens in it is going to have an impact downstream. So although we can't do anything about the river and the homes that are located within it, there is things you can do obviously to address it. But then as you follow up throughout all those roads, I forget all the different roads that you cross, but it goes by the church, goes by the fire station, just basically follows the railroad tracks. There's things we can do to help locally deal with the flooding, but those are things that obviously haven't been studied to date. So as we focus on the overall picture and we see, okay, we got this problem, there's things that are out there with the FEMA funding, and what was the other one we talked about, the municipal flood control grant? And those are things that are out there that are available that you guys are going to probably end up having to look at. So we're going to go from here saying, okay, are we going to do anything in 2023? All it is that you're kind of wanting to document what existing conditions are at this time and see what we can do to improve from them from here going forward. Now, Eric and I have been working together for many years. And obviously, so we've been through a lot of this, and some of them that we've done together has taken us, what, 12 to 13 years to see completion from when we actually put the concepts together, but when we can see pieces of the puzzle come together in order to try and fix it. And so we think, okay, here's a solution here, here's a possibility, but at the end of the day, it's one of those things that you just gotta wait to see where the funding comes in or where options presented to itself for you guys to consider, because some of these grants might not be your best case in case it takes too much money, too much match, or things like that. But this is more about educational thing. I don't know exactly what to do next, except to tell you what's going on and see how you'd like to proceed. But at the end of the day, I am going to encourage you is that just because we got the start of the study doesn't mean that we know there's problems if you go upstream as you head over the town for the south. So obviously, Eric, as an expert myself, we're here to answer any questions. I think we're going to open up the floor and then go from there if you'd like.
I just want to add a couple of points to that, sorry. The first is, this is actually an off year for the DNR municipal flood control grant. There'll be a grant cycle that opens up, well, depends on how you define it. It closes in April of 2024. It opens in October of this year. So if this is something that is of interest, it means you start planning it in October, get your ducks in a row, and you can have an application filed with the DNR next April. So there's that, that's number one. But number two, I just wanted to talk a little bit about this larger project. Joe and I have been working together for a long time, and we just finished a project in Sun Prairie down the road a little ways. We've been working on it since 2009. And the approach was really systemic, and it was not just us as outside consulting engineers working with the city's own staff were working on different things. And we planned out all these different projects that could be done. And some of them, the city put in, like they put in a larger pipe next to an existing pipe, but they had to close that pipe off because they couldn't yet allow that much flow to go downstream because it would just hit the next pipe and make things worse for the folks down there. And so over the course of years, as they found opportunity, dovetail this project with another one that they were planning anyways, like we're gonna rebuild this road, let's put in the infrastructure now and it'll be there when we need it. And finally, we got all the pieces together after all that long time to get it all working, and it's really working splendidly. So it really is a long-term kind of a thing that involves, a lot of interdepartmental planning, a lot of sort of forethought on the part of all the people that make the city work. Sorry, go ahead.
Where are you checking the areas exactly? Because we're talking over there. But I want to know, is there any checking over here? Because there is a problem throughout the city. I just want to make sure that they're all being addressed.
So right now, the project that we were hired to investigate is strictly the creek people. We can certainly look at other things, but that wasn't what we were tasked with.
Well, and again, the creek and evaluated at the connection to the river is where it ended up drawing to us where we couldn't get any answers. So we were told to obviously bring it back and stop at that time to see what further direction could be. So and Eric, I don't need to go back to it, but basically the watershed is a scene that's been validating for, but this is where we found this information, and as Eric alluded to.
Yeah, this is actually a document that was emailed to me saying, hey, this is where we want you to check stuff out, so that's where we focus our attention.
That's Springbrook.
I have a question. So, two things that I always see coming up, pretty popular, right? Conveyance and retention. One thing I don't ever really see talked about is nature-based solutions to help control some of that water. Are you guys familiar with any of those? Is that something you can incorporate into a long-term plan? Maybe get some of the property owners along this route to, you know, incorporate some nature-based solutions to help ease this problem. So that way, maybe we need a 54-foot acre pond instead of a 56-foot acre pond. You know, things like that. It's just stuff I don't hear talked about, but I know it's out there, and I think it's actually really sound to try to use nature to help mitigate some of this.
Yeah, I think maybe the terminology that's more commonly used is like green infrastructure or distributed infrastructure. It's really, I mean, you're right on the money. It's really popular stuff. However, it does tend to be aimed a little bit more towards the water quality side of things because these like infiltrative measures and things, while they're very effective, they have limited capability, right? So if you got a soil that can absorb, say, for instance, 3 inches of water, which is a lot of water, and you think about the 100-year storm is approaching 7 inches of water, by the time that storm comes through, the infiltrative capacity has been used up. Now, you're not wrong that it will make the infrastructure smaller, but there's oftentimes a cost effectiveness balance, right? You have to build a whole bunch of little green infrastructure practices and still a big pond. And sometimes folks are just looking at the absolute dollars and cents that if I gotta build that big pond, I'll just build a big pond and this stuff will happen. The other thing about the green infrastructure, and I'm not trying to downplay this at all, because it's really important. The neighborhood I live in Madison is like infested with green infrastructure. It was actually a pilot study. There's permeable pavement, permeable sidewalk, there's grain gardens in the terrace, there's all sorts of different things going on to show, you know, what the benefit of this is. But it takes a lot to make this a little drop of difference, and it requires huge amounts of public input. Like the rain gardens and the terraces and things, they're all because the property owner said, yes, do it, I'll take care of it. In the absence of that, you know, they would fall out of function almost immediately. So it works, and it's part of the solution, but it's not all of the solution and probably not a big part of the solution.
And that's what I'm saying, like just being part of it, you know, not to say that these other things definitely don't have their place. I'm just saying it's something I don't ever even see put in conjunction with.
Yeah, well, the reason I switched to this slide was just to kind of give an indication of, so here, this black line is the city's limits. There's a whole bunch of stakeholders down here that have impact on what's going on in the city. And, you know, good stewardship in that part of the watershed makes a big, big difference to the folks that live down the stream, which is all you know.
Just to add to your question, Eric, you could touch on it, but one thing we have to deal with is development occurs within the watershed, and especially within the waterway of the creek, is things like compensatory storage. So,
Well, yeah, I mean, one thing to be aware of is a lot of times development ordinances are focused on that particular landowner's property. And that's important if you manage property that way to make sure you're not having downstream impacts. But we've seen time and time again, even developments that on an individual site basis have, say, for instance, 100-year rate control. So they can't discharge water any faster than it did under existing conditions prior to development. The problem is when you have one development next to another one, next to another one, next to another one, even though they're all doing the right thing, site by site by site, collectively, it adds up to being a problem. So a lot of times you have to sort of look at your development ordinances and say, look, you know, we know that as the city expands and goes further south into the watershed, that the effect of all these developments is gonna make it worse for us. So you're gonna have to do just a little bit more to protect our interests. So it might be you control your 100-year rate down to say the 10-year. That way they don't have these cumulative impacts, and all the stuff that you put in place based on today's condition stays good because today's condition doesn't change. Yes, sir.
So I guess my question is, so I understand what it is, what you're talking about to control, you know, the options that we can do to control floodwater. Is it concerned that it's going to get worse over time as development transpires? And I mean, relatively speaking, you know, we're talking about a fairly small number of properties in a fairly significant amount of effort to help our fellow citizens. And of course, that is what we want to do. But I'm just trying to understand in my head okay, what's our obligation? What do we actually have to do? Is it just the immediate short term right here? Or is it, as you alluded to, the bigger focus on long-term development?
So there's a whole bunch of stuff. And the bottom line is that time is not your friend. So, you know, we've seen, through like additional research, the effects of climate change. So it used to be that when folks like me did flood studies, we would refer to this, government publication called TP40. It was put out in the 60s. And it was basically this, what they call a rainfall atlas. All these scientists all across the country measured rainfall. They did some statistical analysis and they said, hey, in this area of the state of Wisconsin, the 100-year storm is about 6 inches in 24 hours. Well, fast forward, you know, now we've got something called NOAA Atlas 14, which was published in 2013, which says that the 100-year storm here is closer to 7 inches. Now, whether that's because of good data or because of climate change, we don't know, but nonetheless, it's a lot more rain. And it was from 10 years ago. So what do we think is gonna happen now? Probably more rain. Another factor of time is this creek is effectively getting older, right? We've got culverts in place and there's sediment moving through and these things are losing their ability to pass flow. So that's getting to be a little bit more substantial. And as we've talked about, to some degree, there's additional development and all of that pavement building roofs is putting more water into the creek than was otherwise there before. So to answer your question, sort of a long wind up, to answer your question, a lot of times this comes down to hard dollars and cents. And if you were representative of FEMA and I was up here talking about a flood study, they would say, that's great. Tell me how much it costs. Now tell me how much I'm saving in terms of reduced flood damage. And so long as I'm paying less than the flood damages I'm reducing, we go forward. So part of the, you know, ultimate decision here is where you get your best return on your dollar. And it may be that, like I said early, that the property buyouts are the way to go. But you can't buy someone's property if they don't want to sell it. So it may be kind of much ado about nothing when it comes down to that.
So I have another question, because I think it was something that was brought up almost 2 years ago. With the tailwater from the river, what really effective means are there to mitigate that? Because the way I look at the river is it's gonna hold so much water. And we're gonna keep trying to stuff water somewhere where we can't stuff more water. So is that really something that's easy to mitigate, or are we trying to mitigate some of the other ones first and that's gonna have to be an afterthought?
Yeah, you're right on. I mean, you think about the size of the watershed kind of dictating the magnitude of the problem. The bigger the watershed gets, the more difficult it is to manage it. And so these 5 homes, which are in the backwater of the river, you know, no matter what you can do within your city limits, no matter what you can do, even working with the folks upstream, at least in the creek watershed, it's gonna be very limited and make no difference to those folks. What you can do on the river is even more limited because your area of influence is so much less and the watershed is so much larger. And so these folks, really, the only recourse is either some sort of flood proofing of their homes, raising them up, you know, putting in waterproof closures and things like that, or buying them out.
Originally, the DNR suggested we not repair our 2 dams, take them out to save those 5 homes essentially and create a reservoir between where the dams were, and that would be the flood protection for the river part, not the creek part. Where when you had your 100-year storm, we've had, I think, 4 of them in the last 20 years. But when you have your 100-year storm, that part, the old river bed would fill up first, you close, you know, that would act as your reservoir.
Yeah,
But we didn't do that. We didn't take the DNR's advice. We repaired the dams and saved the shoreline recreation on the river. So I don't think there's much we can do down there.
yeah, and it would be, you know, you would be signing up for needing to be pretty diligent with your operating, right? To make that whole thing work, you would lower the water in front of the dams when it was dry. And then you'd have that extra storage when you get a big rain and fill that up and then not be quite so deep on the downstream end, but. That's a lot of operations and a lot of control and predicting the weather and all that stuff.
We do a little bit of that now, the public works director, there's a lot of rain in the forecast, he opens the dams the week before.
Sure, yeah.
I know how much it helps.
Yes, you're thinking about next steps moving forward, and obviously there's part of communication here that's gonna be part of this. Like I said, I don't see it as a solution, but I do see you guys needing to think about having some type of idea of what the extent of the problems are. Now, you've studied at different times, as you can see, but when options present itself, having that information available to you will be important. When it comes to the area down here and stuff, obviously the communication of that is gonna be a little bit different. If there's funding options, if there's communication, but obviously every time one of these homes sell, every time somebody does improvements here, everything you do that obviously impacts what could happen in a repurchase or what could happen, obviously, with communication as this goes out to new owners. Now, you know the people here very well, and obviously you've been dealing with it because that's how I think we got hired, was the fact that some flooding occurred and said, okay, can you look at it? And one of the issues is at some point it has to be communicated. And we have to talk about it, and it is what it is, but it's not something that's onus on you necessarily, where, like you said, they might not be willing sellers. They might not be able to, the funding of the grant, what options are available to you as you look into them. But either way, having those presented to you so you can make decisions along with dealing with this, because it's just a matter of time before they flood again. As you said, forward so much time, I don't know, Eric, what you looked at, but what flood event does it take for that area to flood? It's not gonna take the 100 event every time. So as much as I'd say, boy, I hope it goes away, the problem is that, it's gonna be here at some point, just hopefully not soon. I mean, I don't want to wish this on anybody, but it would be worthwhile for you to take those next steps and prepare yourself so that you can maybe address it or see if you can get good funding for this. So I know right now we're looking at the LaValle Center. There's that one that we do the whole downtown. Well, LaValle, they got FEMA, they got flood out, and that's major money, but they're basically moving their entire downtown. And so I don't know exactly what it is, but they just don't have a choice, but that's a long process and not a fun one. But at the end of the day, it's obviously the only option they have to basically make their community work. So they're obviously going through it.
Yeah, so these are just some things I printed off before I came here tonight. This is from the Wisconsin DNR. This is the Municipal Flood Control Grant Program. It's the one that opens up in October of this year, and then grants are due in April. The grant program funds 8 different kinds of projects, and they're sort of in order of priority, and the top priority is property purchase. And so if there's folks who have, repetitive loss, so they flooded, fixed, flooded, fixed, and so on and so forth, that's gonna make a really strong application if those folks would be so interested in partaking of that program. The city would be the applicant on their behalf, and there's a bunch of hoops you gotta jump through to make that work, but it's been, a very successful program, and I think the Wisconsin DNR is very pleased with it. So that's something that, folks are coming to the city mentioning this, and that seems to be an option. That would be one program I would encourage the city to consider.
Do you think, is there a 3-tier or 4-tier solution? I mean, should we be doing anything in the meanwhile? Should we be adding a chain of retention and detention ponds? Should we do anything like that, or should we just wait until, or do we just leave it the way it is? What are you recommending?
Well, I don't think I have any recommendation at all at this point. I mean, we would want to talk a little bit more with, I don't know, whoever plans out some of the utility projects here in the city to say, what is it that's on the plate? Are there, I heard the mayor discuss that there was some potential development plans, and so, different lands may be being considered for different changes in their use. As I mentioned, there's just a lot of things that will be required to do this, and there's gonna be a lot of zeros after the dollar sign to make that all happen. Not one single thing is gonna be all by itself able to really address any of these problems. So I'd hate to say, go and spend X millions of dollars, to save, I don't know, maybe not X millions of dollars worth of homes. We want to just sort of systemically plan that a little bit more.
I first make sure you have a complete handle on the creek that goes through town.
Pardon, say that again?
A complete understanding of what options and what modeling you have. So obviously you see what we did down here, and we went out there and surveyed, and we shot the first opening or lowest opening in each one of these homes. So we can tell if FEMA came in and they needed flood insurance, we can turn that right into a map and say which ones are in or which one are out in order to impact their floodplain, which is just a standard requirement to deal with it. And there's 5 of them, or 7, like 9 that we told you about, that don't matter. But that happens at every road crossing as you go through town. I know I talked to one gentleman that said he's outside of town, he knows it rains, he's in a moat, he's got water all around. Well, again, the elevation is gonna be there, but having that information at my finger, when we have it for our communities, it gives us the ability then to see, well, this development comes in, what kind of impact does it have on this stream coming through? Because just imagine, you already got a waterway coming through, and I heard the stories about how you sandbag in order to avoid a certain area, push the water one way or the other. You already know where the problems are. Problem is that the impacts, somebody's gonna develop within it, what impact does that have? If somebody's gonna fill up an area, what impact does that have? And no one can answer those questions yet. So although we deal with the bottom, which is what, to me, the worst part, as you're going through and you start to develop it and you get to the end of the study, those are things that are important for you and your planning commission when you're making decisions. And no one has that information, from what I can tell. You look at area studies, you look at the whole thing, you look at what could happen if we go from 350 down to like 186 back in 2001, but it didn't happen. Well, you already know this, is that if you take out 400 CFS, you cut it off completely, you still have flooding, but you still have the localized stuff as you go through there. And those are things that I think, I don't know how making decisions for your plan commission and your board is gonna be easy without having that stuff available when people come in. And it's not gonna be popular, right? You know, we've been through this and we've seen it, but at the end of the day, it's like, it is what it is. And so for us that, you know, are not really from town, it's kind of just on us to be able to say, this is the impact it has on your neighbors. How can you protect them? What can you do with this development to make sure it's not worse for anybody else? We're now gonna set the ground at 0, and we just don't want to make it worse. We eventually want to do projects to make it better. But it doesn't mean we can improve everything, but education is part of this. You're learning here tonight. Now imagine having people, neighbors in here hearing about it for the first time, what their opinion is gonna be. And so that's where you get the feedback, but once you have that consistent message and we try and address it when things occur within this corridor, it just takes time.
A lot of homeowners don't say anything because they don't want to devalue their home for future reasons. So there's a lot of shut mouth people around about their homes, which is sad.
And again, then what happens when a new resident comes in and all of a sudden something happens? Oh yeah, it flooded back in this year. At the end of the day, it's not going away. As much as we'd like to say, let's not deal with it, it's coming.
Even if your homeowner doesn't say anything, if your house is still rated on whether it's in a 100-year floodplain or not.
Well, the map floodplain is exact and it shows in different areas. And so these people, let's just say if this is a house right here or whatever, they're required obviously to look at it. There's no way to get around when it comes to insurance.
Right.
And so they can prove it by doing what we did. You go survey, look at an elevation, you submit the Lomar and you say, look, I'm above it. My assets are protected. Might have water around me, but my house is high enough. Or if not, jack it up, or like we've seen over in other places, they actually raise it up or fill in the basements.
Well,
And I've just seen the-
yeah, I mean, I say that just from experience of a house I owned years and years ago was in a 100-year floodplain.
You've been through it.
And we had a 100-year flood. And I had water in my basement.
Sorry for the members. I don't know the exact easy answer for you guys. This is part of dealing with the community when you have this that's been happening over time. It didn't happen overnight. It didn't happen just because you guys showed up and got elected, but it's been something that's been dealt with. That's now to the point where it's like, it's only gonna get worse.
So what do we do with potential development in our plan? I'm on the planning commission. Are we supposed to call you to see what, we already do an impact study on everything that's proposed.
Well, first,
We can't stop development.
we never, no. This is not put a moratorium. This is not, don't stop development. This is not, like I said, there will be development within this corridor and it's not to stop it. They have rights to develop property. They do have the right.
And we do offsets already, and we do.
Well, you do it to the state of Wisconsin to meet the requirements that are in place. But when you get areas like this, there's something they can do a little bit better. And we've had this, many of our design reviews, when we look at communities, It's like if we capitalize in certain areas or work with them to restrict it a little bit more, or we hold the water back, there's things that you can possibly do with the development, but it's never a goal to stop it. It's just more to make sure we're not making it worse and controlling it and looking for those nice opportunities in order to be able to say, okay, did we make a dent in this elevation and now are we improving the corridor?
Yeah, another way to look at it, a lot of communities, they have a subdivision ordinance. Says if you're gonna, develop your land, you gotta have your streets like this and utilities and so on and so forth. But they stop short of stormwater management. And I think there's some thought that, well, the state requires stormwater management, so why do we, the city, need to do it? And it's important to kind of understand the roles. So the state of Wisconsin requires stormwater management, and actually some of the stuff they require can be considered green infrastructure. They require rate control, they require water quality treatment, and they require a certain amount of infiltration. But that's all geared explicitly towards water quality. They actually have had government sort of oversight, make sure that they're restricted in their ability to control flooding. They don't have the authority for 100-year rate control, things like that. That all lies with the county or with the local municipality. So one of the things you could do as part of your development planning is have an ordinance for local stormwater management that looks at these larger storm events. And you can have special considerations in there that says, hey, if we are contemplating development in a watershed that has known flooding problems, then we have to go above and beyond to make sure that we're not making those problems worse. Can't allow somebody to develop their property at the expense of somebody else.
I think we try and do that now. Don't have any formal internal controls. We might go 120% of what, we might just say we have known problems, so we go a little bit beyond what's required by the hard surface offset and so forth, but you're talking about something more formal.
Well, it's more of the overall system. So just because they discharge it at the same rate, what happens downstream? And we don't know those things. Your call, we're here for questions, guys, but like I said, this is only exciting to some points, it's. I don't like stormwater. Any questions for us other than this? Encourage to think about it. Obviously, we can come back and have other discussions. We are on hold right now, obviously, because where is that? The next part would be, to me, would be to have a better study of the corridor, go past the stretch, that you have that whole idea mapped out so you can make decisions, but that's up to you on how you want to proceed. So we're just here to fulfill that last obligation of letting you know what's going on.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
All right.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.
All right, date and time of the next Public Works Committee meeting will be February 27th, immediately following finance. Item D, Personnel Committee, discuss with possible action. This should be the primary full-time deputy clerk position. No,
No, in the event it was moved up to, the one from personnel was moved up to council.
Oh. okay, so we can
We can table that one.
table that one as well. Take a motion to table.
I'll make a motion to table.
Alderman Reese. Alderman Smith, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It is tabled. Date and time of the next personnel committee meeting is February 27th. Immediately following Public Works. Public Safety Committee discussed with possible action extending UTV ATV hours. I think in committee, this was discussed. The police department had no issue with removing any restriction to hours. I met today with Nolan Franti, city attorney. He doesn't see any issues with removing hours requirements as it relates to UTV, ATV use. So is anybody interested in making a motion to abolish the hours restrictions on the UTV and ATVs?
I'll make a motion just so we can discuss.
Yeah, okay. Motion by Reed, second by Olson. Now we can discuss.
So my only point is, I personally, I don't care if there's no problems with it and you're okay with it, that's totally fine with me. I would just let people know, like, remember, there is always a cost in us doing this.
Sure.
So, and it's not insignificant, it's a, my opinion, sizable amount of money for the average person to think about, so I guess my only point is just keep that in mind.
If we're changing the, and to that point, Nolan, changing the ordinance by removing the stipulation on hours, is that a heavy lift on your part to get that done?
No, that's pretty straightforward. The only question I had, I took another look at the ordinance and there's a separate hours restriction for snowmobiles. When we last looked at this a couple of years ago to, open it up to ATV and UTV use, we kept in some separate rules for snowmobiles. Right now, it said no snowmobile use anywhere in the city between the hours of 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. I don't know if that was the prior limit, probably was. And then, obviously there's a limitation for 9 p.m. to 7 a.m. So it's slightly more restrictive for ATVs. You want to do it for snowmobiles as well, or we talking about ATVs, UTVs?
Do you think there's an issue? I mean, for the most part, the snowmobiles are kind of on the outskirts anyways.
On the river,
Yeah.
we had a lot of complaints on the river with, people who lived along the river and they had actually had 2 a.m. races and rallies. So I don't know, it's those people. What do we do? What do we do, chief, if there's a lot of complaints?
The snowmobile situation is a little bit more complicated from an enforcement standpoint in comparison to UTVs. Because the UTVs are gonna be on the roadway and we have a patrol car that can drive on the roadway and, and enforce it. Where the snowmobiles, it's a little bit more of a, challenge because they're going, on frozen surfaces of the river and trails and that type of thing. And just it generally be winter, it's more difficult to enforce. So from my perspective of, keeping the snowmobiles ordinance the way that it is, because of that, it's more difficult to enforce. And the UTV situation, we had 6 complaints last year and 4 of them were just minor. And the other ones were some speed. We haven't had issues with UTVs in comparison to everything else we deal with. And looking at the, people that want, all the individuals that I spoke to that want to operate these things at night, want to drive to and from work. So they want to drive into work for second shift and drive home at 10:30, or driving in to work for day shift and drive in at 5:30 in the morning. That's what people are looking to do. We have an officer patrolling 24/7. So if we have someone that decides to be a nuisance in an ATV at night, it's no different than someone being a nuisance in a car at night. We can handle it and enforce it just the same. So I guess that's how I kind of look at it and in relation to the snowmobile ordinance. And the snowmobile ordinance is also subjected to the weather and there being enough snow and trails for that to happen, which is at best a couple weeks out of the year. So,
Chief, does our existing signage stipulate hours for the UTVs that were put up? So there's no cost there.
So Alderman Reese, to your specific question, is your concern just, is this gonna cause any problems if we just remove that subsection from the ordinance?
No, I guess I'm just curious, like, is it worthwhile to just do a blanket and make it even across the board? That's more or less my question.
Yeah, so that's my opinion on it. Just so it's difficult to enforce the snowmobiles. So at night in that, it's simple to enforce unless we get a snowmobile ourselves, which we've had in the past. Staff to.
So are you saying it's kind of a moot point?
Yeah, because people that are snowmobiling, the chances of it actually happening in the city is only a few weeks out of the, year anyway, and on a good year. So I don't see any reason to change the snowmobile ordinance. And I don't have any issues with changing the UTV ordinance.
So let me get this clear. You're saying leave the snowmobiles with a restriction between 6 a.m. and 2 a.m.
Correct.
But take it off, okay, take it off the UTVs, okay.
Yes.
The golf carts.
That's included.
So we would talk about UTV, ATV, golf carts,
Golf carts, yeah.
any
But
time of day or night.
citizens should be reminded that if you're gonna operate a golf cart at night, it's
Their
gonna have
lights.
headlights and taillights.
Got it.
Yeah.
That's in the order.
Yeah, so, haven't had any issues to date, but just to remind people that for safety reasons, because we had to see someone get hurt.
So I think we're talking about minimal cost to change the ordinance.
It would basically, if you're removing all hourly restrictions for golf carts, ATVs or UTVs, you would be basically just repealing subsection subsection M3 of section 397-13 from the ordinance, and I can renumber the rest of that subsection. It's fairly straightforward.
So we'd entertain a motion to repeal subsection M3 of ordinance 397.13, so on and so forth. Anybody care to make that motion? They made the motion. Oh, that's right, motion is made.
Yeah.
All right, so you got the wording on that? M3, subsection M3, or 397.13.
Yeah, I have a copy of the ordinance, so I can make that change and send it to the city clerk.
Okay. Any further discussion?
I think you have to take a roll on that because it affects the ordinance.
Okay, let's take the roll.
Alderperson Reese.
Aye.
Alderperson Olson.
Aye.
Alderperson Bob Smith.
Aye.
Alderperson Jack Abbott.
All right.
Alderperson Roger Smith.
Aye. Clarification, when will that take effect? The change?
I think you have to publish it and then it takes effect. Yeah,
It takes effect.
our treasurer was a clerk at one time, she knows.
Yeah, there's.
Right.
We have noticed it.
Yeah, you have to notice it and then it takes effect.
Yeah.
Got it, okay, thank you.
Mayor, do we need to waive the first and second readings for this since we're amending the ordinance?
No,
That's what we're doing.
you have to do a first and second reading if the ordinance is, well, no, you're repealing, so no, you don't.
All right, thank you. Date and time of the next public safety committee meeting will be February 27th at 6 p.m. Finance committee, first item, December 22 and January 23 reports.
So I've attached, looking back to see what you've gotten previously, so I've just kind of kept it the same and got caught up from December's and then attached January's. I'm just kind of going off the format of what you've done previously. And then it looks like you've been provided monthly reports more at the finance committee meeting. My question also too is that the way you want to keep doing it? You know, did that work for everybody or any changes?
You suggest any changes? We were comfortable with this, although we didn't get. The reports we got were kind of convoluted. Sometimes they would be pages and pages long when they didn't need to be.
One suggestion I've been meeting with the department heads on is that, you know, if we can kind of clean up some of the functions within City Hall to get things done more timely, that I can reconcile the bank accounts right away, that I would prefer to get the monthly reports out to the department heads. So they have the information to effectively address anything at the same time as this. So then I didn't know, for me, it would be typical to be able to provide you guys the budget reports of the month before by this meeting. So you're not-
That's one thing that department heads and the council likes to know. How we are performing as to the budget, that's important. But then the ones you're talking about here, it's a council meeting. We approve. Technically, we approve the checks you've already deemed that we're responsible for. We don't want to incur any late fees. And mainly, this is just a process so that the council is familiar with what the checks are for and who's getting, if there's any errors in that. And to familiarize themselves with who's getting, what the payroll is and what the insurance payments are and so forth. So I think the format we had, although people used to get up, we formally recommend to pay the bills, well, that's not exactly what we're doing. We're approving the payments that were already made. We were actually auditing the report, the checks. And I don't see any reason to change it. I don't know, does anybody have an issue with how we had, unless you have a suggestion?
No, I'm saying I think it's, you know, you need to keep this step. I'm just asking
Yeah.
if you would want the budget reports before this meeting, or would you rather wait and have those at your second meeting?
The committee meetings is,
At the committee meeting? Okay,
that's when that's when the departments are here to hear how they're progressing.
okay.
Unless somebody else does it different.
I don't have enough experience to have an opinion on it yet, so.
We haven't had any issues with the way it was before, except that sometimes they were late. But anyway. Is there any? Okay,
Anything else regarding the December report or January report?
is it says for approval, do we have to approve?
There's nothing to approve.
Okay,
It's just a discussion or reception of a report. Informational purposes only. Anything else on the financial reports? Next item, discuss with possible action, beginning the process to engage a broker for the sale of the former library at 111 North Main Street. I know this came up in discussion at the last committee meeting. So in December 2020, the common council signed a resolution, a joint resolution with the park, with the library board, agreeing to sell the existing library, and those proceeds are stipulated to go to the library board and to be applied towards building expenses on the new library. So we do not have the option of not selling the library. The agreement is to sell the library and then for the common council to make a decision. Well, first of all, I'm a big believer in the open market. There are no pre-negotiated, pre-existing agreements as to who's going to buy the library. And in fact, I've heard of a couple of new entities that are neighbors to the library. So I think there's going to be some interest in people acquiring the library for their own business purposes. So I believe that we rely on a broker, get the best value that we can, the most money that we can for the library in the open market, and then deliver those proceeds to the park board. So that's why this is on the agenda.
and my wife is on the library board, as you know. And she said, well, this is tiny bit premature. She's 40 years of real estate broker also. She said, what we're gonna be doing is inviting people to do a market analysis, which is the way you entertain a broker. But she said, the biggest part the council has to decide ahead of that is, what is it you're selling? We haven't decided what is possibly for sale.
I think, if the question is, do we sell the library and the parking behind it?
Or some of the parking lots or what?
And again, I'll leave that to the council. Is there any advantage to the city in keeping the library or that parking lot behind it? Is there an advantage to the city in keeping that for the city?
Oh, no, that's,
What is that building worth without parking? Well, the thing is, you have to think about if that building isn't used potentially in the same layout, that upper parking lot, let's just say that they want to flatten the library and start over. That upper parking lot may not be conducive to what they're trying to do. It may be conducive to it, it may not be, so that's a tough one. I mean, I think having a broker kind of tell us what they think would be our best.
That's exactly why we pay a broker to help us make that decision.
Makes sense to me. I think we need to get some input from some brokers to see what they're doing.
So Roger Smith, is that a motion to,
I make a motion to engage brokers, or invite brokers to give us, how do we want to word that? Engage brokers for the sale of the former library, so engage brokers to.
do a market analysis.
market analysis?
Yeah.
Do you have that?
And for what? I mean, we get, no.
For the library
Yeah,
building, which may or may not include. the
Yeah.
library.
What it will cost.
Yeah.
So,
Well, that's what they do, they say how much they do it.
They will be paid out of the proceeds of the sale.
okay,
That's the standard, right?
right, but some may want,
Understand that we have no obligation to sell the library for a specific lower amount, but in the interest of doing the right thing, we want to get the most money that we possibly can.
Where I'm going with this is what percentage they want.
Well, that's what their bid is, that's what their market analysis includes, what they will accept as a commission. Plus, I think you should, when I recommend you amend your thing to say commercial broker. I don't think we want to.
Yes, we want to, yes, I would like to amend my recommendation to specify commercial broker at this
Okay.
point.
I'm gonna second Roger's motion.
Roger Smith's made the motion, Joe Reese has seconded. Any further discussion? Let's take the roll.
Alderperson Roger Smith.
Aye.
Alderperson Joseph Reese.
Aye.
Alderperson Kim Wilson.
Aye.
Alderperson Bob Smith.
Aye.
Alderperson Jack Abbott.
All right.
All right, motion carries. Thank you. Date and time, the next finance committee meeting will be February 27th, immediately following public safety. Next item, park board, no report. Date and time, the next meeting, March 1st, 6 p.m. Planning commission. Item 1, discuss and approve certified survey map for the St. John's property.
I'm on the planning commission, I'll make them. We looked at it, we discussed it, and I will make a motion to approve the certified. survey.
Alderman Smith with the motion,
Oh, sorry.
Jack Abbott, Alderman Abbott with the second. Any discussion?
Well, did we cover all the drainage, everything? I mean, I know we talked about it.
So that's a great point. I mean, that
Did we run it past these guys
it is right
in the middle?
upstream and right in the middle of the corridor.
No, we did. talk
They
about it.
knew it's.
But also the MSA is the engineer of record and working with St. John's on their project.
Okay,
So we have a choice to either pass it or defer until we have the opportunity to talk a little more with MSA and understand it.
well, that could be a long time the way he was talking, so I'm happy with making the motion.
All right, the motion is made by Bob Smith. Somebody second it? All right, you did, thank you. Any further discussion? Let's take a roll.
Alderperson Bob Smith.
Aye.
Alderperson Jack Abbott.
Aye.
Alderperson Roger Smith.
Aye.
Alderperson Reese.
Aye.
Alderperson Olson.
Aye.
Due date and time next planning commission will be March 13th, 6 p.m. CDA, no report, date and time, the next CDA meeting will be February 22nd, 6 p.m. Communications committee, no report, date and time, the next meeting will be February 20th at 4 p.m. I get a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
I second it.
Roger Smith, second by Alderman Reese. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we are adjourned at